The silent father, understanding different languages of paternal love. There's a type of father who rarely says I love you, who doesn't ask unnecessary questions, who speaks only when he has something concrete to say. He doesn't engage in small talk, doesn't express emotions verbally, and might seem distant or cold to those who don't know him well. But when he opens his mouth, it's to give advice that actually matters, and when he acts, he does something real and tangible, not just empty words. Welcome back to Psychology with Sergio Popovici, where we explore the science behind human behavior and what it means for your life. Today, we're diving into something that affects millions of families, understanding fathers who express love through actions rather than words. By the end of this video, you'll understand why silence doesn't equal absence of love and how to recognize the deep care that exists in fathers who show rather than tell. Let's start with a fundamental concept from psychology: the difference between instrumental and expressive love. Research by psychologist Francesca Adler-Beder shows that people express care in two primary ways: instrumental support, which involves concrete actions and problem solving, and expressive support, which involves verbal affirmation and emotional communication. Neither is superior to the other, they're simply different languages of love, shaped by personality, culture, and life experience. Many fathers, particularly from certain generations and cultures, were socialized to express love instrumentally rather than expressively. They fix things, they provide, they protect, they teach practical skills. These are their I love you statements. A study published in the Journal of Family Psychology found that fathers who grew up in emotionally reserved households often continue this pattern, not because they lack love, but because they learned this as the appropriate way to express it. The research shows something crucial. These fathers often feel love just as deeply as expressive fathers, they simply channel it differently. Brain imaging studies on parental love show that fathers who express love through action activate the same neural circuits associated with attachment and care as fathers who express love verbally. The love is there, the neurological signature is identical, only the output differs. Now let's talk about why some fathers speak sparingly and only when they have something concrete to say. Developmental psychologist Michael Lamb's research on father-child communication reveals that many fathers adopt what he calls a quality over quantity approach. They don't engage in conversational maintenance or social lubrication through small talk. Instead, they reserve their words for moments of genuine teaching or important guidance. This communication style has evolutionary roots in ancestral environments. Fathers often functioned as protectors and teachers of practical survival skills. Speaking only when necessary conserved energy and ensured that when they did speak, children paid attention because it mattered. Modern research shows this pattern persists across cultures, with fathers in many societies serving as what anthropologists call selective communicators. A study in Human Nature journal found that in over 70% of cultures studied, fathers spoke less frequently than mothers, but their communications were more likely to involve teaching, warning, or practical instruction. This doesn't indicate emotional distance. It indicates a different communication strategy optimized for specific types of information transfer. Here's something fascinating from attachment research. Children with fathers who show love through action develop secure attachments just as readily as children with verbally expressive fathers. What matters for attachment security isn't the form of love expression, it's the consistency and reliability of care. Psychologist John Bowlby, who developed attachment theory, emphasized that children need to know they can depend on their caregivers, whether that dependability comes through words or actions. A father who consistently shows up, fixes problems, provides guidance, and takes concrete action creates just as secure an attachment as one who frequently says, I love you. The key variable is reliability, not verbal frequency. Now let's address a common misconception, that fathers who don't express emotions verbally are emotionally unavailable or damaged. Research by psychologist Ronald Levant on masculine norms shows that many men were socialized into what he calls normative male alexithymia, difficulty identifying and expressing emotions verbally. But here's the critical insight: difficulty expressing emotions verbally doesn't mean difficulty feeling emotions or caring deeply. Brain studies show that these men experience emotional responses just as intensely as more expressive individuals. They simply lack the socialization or vocabulary to articulate these feelings. When such A father gives advice instead of saying I love you. When he fixes something instead of discussing feelings, he's expressing care through the channels available to him. It's not emotional absence, it's emotional translation into a different medium. Cultural psychology research adds another layer to this understanding. Psychologist Hee-Jung Kim's work on cultural differences in emotion expression shows that many cultures value action over verbal expression as the highest form of love. In these cultural contexts, saying I love you frequently might actually be seen as shallow or performative, while concrete acts of service are viewed as the deepest expression of care. A father from such a background isn't being cold. He's expressing love in the culturally validated way he learned was most meaningful and authentic. Research on intergenerational transmission of parenting styles helps explain why these patterns persist. Studies show that people generally parent the way they were parented, unless they consciously work to change these patterns. A father who was raised by a silent but reliable father often replicates this style, not because he's unloving, but because this is his template for what good fathering looks like. He associates love with dependability, practical support, and wisdom shared sparingly but meaningfully, because that's how he experienced love growing up. Now, here's where this gets really important for children of such fathers. Research shows that misinterpreting a parent's love language can create unnecessary pain and distance. A study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that adult children who learned to recognize and appreciate their parents' instrumental love expressions reported higher relationship satisfaction and less resentment. The father who never said I love you but worked two jobs to provide education, who never asked about feelings but always fixed what was broken, who never gave praise but taught valuable skills, he was saying I love you constantly, just not in words. Learning to hear this language is crucial for healing and appreciation. Psychologist Gary Chapman's work on love languages, while popularized for romantic relationships, applies powerfully to parent-child dynamics. His research identifies 5 primary love languages: words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. Many fathers express love primarily through acts of service, and when children expect words of affirmation as the primary love language, they may completely miss the constant stream of love being expressed. The father who maintains the car, who researches the best school, who builds something with his hands, who teaches practical skills, he's speaking love fluently, just in a different dialect. Now let's talk about the wisdom of selective speech from a psychological perspective. Research on communication effectiveness shows that when someone speaks rarely, their words carry more weight and receive more attention. A father who speaks only when he has something concrete to say is leveraging what psychologists call information value. The rarity of his communication makes each instance more impactful. Children with such fathers often report that when their father spoke, they listened carefully because they knew it mattered. This creates a different but equally valid communication dynamic than constant verbal interaction. There's also research on the power of action-based teaching versus verbal instruction. Cognitive psychologist Albert Bandura's social learning theory demonstrates that people learn most effectively through observation and modeling rather than verbal instruction alone. A father who demonstrates rather than lectures, who shows rather than tells, may actually be facilitating deeper learning and skill acquisition. When he fixes something in silence, teaching by example, the child learns not just the skill but the values of self-reliance, problem-solving, and quiet competence. Now here's something crucial from family systems therapy. Different family members often need to express and receive love differently. Therapist Salvador Minichin's structural family therapy research shows that healthy families accommodate multiple communication styles rather than demanding uniformity. A father who expresses love through action and a child who craves verbal affirmation can both have their needs met when there's understanding and translation between styles. The child can learn to recognize I fixed your bike as I love you, while the father might occasionally stretch to verbalize care even if it feels uncomfortable. Research on emotional regulation offers another important perspective. For many men, particularly those from generations when emotional expression was discouraged, taking action is actually a healthy form of emotional regulation. Instead of suppressing feelings entirely, they channel emotional energy into productive, caring actions. The father who doesn't discuss his worry but instead researches thoroughly and prepares carefully is processing his emotions through instrumental care. This is actually psychologically healthier than many people assume. Let me share something from my work with clients struggling to understand their fathers. One of the most powerful moments in therapy is when someone realizes that their father has been saying, I love you their entire life, just not in words. They remember the lunches packed every day, the things quietly fixed, the advice given sparingly but perfectly timed, the sacrifices made without mention. When they learn to translate these actions into the love language they represent, years of perceived emotional distance can transform into appreciation for constant, reliable care. Here's research on long-term outcomes. Studies show that children of action-oriented fathers often develop strong practical skills, self-reliance, and resilience. A longitudinal study following children into adulthood found that those with fathers who emphasized teaching practical skills and problem-solving showed higher self-efficacy and better stress management. The father who doesn't coddle but teaches competence is providing a different but valuable form of developmental support. Now let's address when this communication style can become problematic. Research shows that while instrumental love is valid and valuable, some verbal communication and emotional expression is necessary for healthy relationships. Complete emotional silence can indicate issues like depression, trauma, or avoidant attachment that may need professional support. The difference is between preference for action over words versus complete inability or refusal to engage emotionally at any level. Healthy instrumental love includes occasional verbal communication, especially during critical moments, even if it's not the primary mode of expression. Family therapy research by John Gottman shows that successful families need both instrumental and emotional support, though the ratio can vary widely. What matters is that children feel both cared for and understood, which can happen through different combinations of action and words. A father who primarily shows love through action but can access verbal expression during important moments is demonstrating healthy flexibility. So what does this mean practically for understanding and appreciating action-oriented fathers? First, learn to recognize the love language of action and translate it into emotional terms. Every practical thing your father does for you is an expression of care. Start noticing and acknowledging this. Second, if you need verbal affirmation, communicate this need clearly, but also show appreciation for the love that's already being expressed. You might say, I know you show you care by always being there when I need help, and I really appreciate that. It would also mean a lot to me if sometimes you could tell me you're proud of me. Third, consider writing a letter of appreciation that acknowledges the specific actions that demonstrated love. Research shows that this kind of recognition can sometimes open emotional doors that direct requests cannot. Fourth, recognize that your father's communication style likely reflects his own upbringing and cultural context, not a lack of love for you. Understanding the origins of his pattern can transform hurt into compassion. And finally, if you're a father yourself who relates to this style, know that it's valid to show love through action, but also stretch occasionally into verbal expression. Research shows that children benefit from both, and even if verbal expression feels uncomfortable, small efforts can have significant impact. Before we close, I want to emphasize something important. This video isn't justifying emotional neglect or dismissing the need for verbal communication. It's about recognizing that love expressed through reliable action is real love, just in a different form. If you grew up with a father who never said I love you but was always there, who never praised but always taught, who never discussed feelings but always helped solve problems, you were loved. Learning to recognize and appreciate this form of love can heal years of misunderstanding and create space for deeper connection. The father who shows rather than tells, who acts rather than speaks, who gives advice rather than affirmation, he's not emotionally absent, he's emotionally different, and understanding this difference is the key to appreciation, healing, and connection. If you're struggling to understand your family dynamics, communication patterns, or need help bridging different love languages, I offer psychological consultation services in Munich, Germany. Thank you for watching Psychology with Sergiu Popovici. If this video helped you see a relationship in a new light, please subscribe for more research-backed insights. I'll see you in the next video.